So interesting quote here from Adrian Newey. When I first read it, it actually read to me as though Adrian Newey was not too worried about the decline in performance of the Red Bull last season. And I was thinking, well, that's not a surprise really. The man was leaving, so it's not his problem. That sounds like a you problem to me, Red Bull. But it actually reads as though Red Bull themselves were not too worried about the decline either, which I don't know. They seemed pretty worried to me, and they had good reason to. They were really struggling in the mid part of the season. But let's have a look at what's been said here, guys. Full article on the F1Chronicle.com as always. Adrian Newey says problems he spotted with Red Bull's 2024 car were not swiftly addressed by the team management. Amid the power struggle and internal turmoil at the team last year, Newey, one of the most respected technical minds in Formula 1 history, decided to leave. It coincided with a very obvious drop-off in Red Bull's performance, resulting in both McLaren and Ferrari racing past in the Constructors' Championship. Obviously, part of it was McLaren in particular and Ferrari as well developing their cars and doing a very good job of it. Newey, now at Aston Martin, told Automotor und Sport. But from what I could see at Red Bull, the 2024 car, and also in the latter stages of 2023, was starting to become more difficult to drive. Max Verstappen still managed to secure his fourth consecutive Drivers' World Championship, but Sergio Perez's decline was so steep that he ultimately lost his seat for 2025. Max could still drive it, Newey said. It didn't suit him, but he could still drive it. No. We'd already started to see bigger differences in performance between Max and Checo in 2023, which continued into the first part of 2024, but the car was still quick enough to be able to deal with it. It was something I was starting to worry about though, and not many other people in the organisation seemed to be too worried about it, the British designer revealed. Once Newey had stopped working on Red Bull's car development, the situation sharply declined, before improving somewhat towards the end of the season. A fascinating four-way battle between McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull and Mercedes is now shaping up for 2025. From what I could see from the outside, and this is not a criticism, Newey added, but the Red Bull guys, I think, just maybe because of a lack of experience, kept going in the same direction, and the problem became more and more acute to the point where even Max was finding it difficult to drive. Newey insists it just wasn't a matter of losing control of the car's ideal setup. I'm not talking about the setup, he said. I'm talking about the fact that the setup can mask problems to a certain extent, but the problem is still there. And the driving abilities of Max Verstappen certainly masked it as well, because basically, apparently, from what I've heard, and take this with a grain of salt if you wish, but from what I've heard, Checo Perez was basically saying, guys, this car is getting worse and I'm really struggling to drive it. But Max was still driving the wheels off it, so they didn't really take him that seriously. That's what I've heard. And then eventually the car got even worse and Max started to struggle, so then they started to do something about it. But in the meantime, between Perez noticing it and Max maybe not noticing it, but actually showing up in his results and just kind of getting on with things, but still having the issues there. Between those 2 points, the car was developed a lot and the problem just got worse, and that is why they ended up going down a bit. I call it a developmental tunnel, where basically, you can go really far and improve the car for a little bit, but eventually that tunnel will end. You will hit a brick wall eventually going down there into the fog of unknown, basically, at that point. And once you hit that point, you have to turn back. You got to turn back and look for an alternate exit, because at that point, you can't improve the car. And if you can't improve the car in Formula 1, you're in big trouble. Simple as that. But it's even worse because it actually going down that tunnel in that process, the car got worse, or it got more difficult to drive, maybe faster, but more difficult to drive. So the drivers made more mistakes. So yeah, that attitude really, I think it does show up in what happened. Eventually, yeah, they rectified it. They ended the season with Red Bull being one of the fastest cars again. But Italy, they were the fourth fastest car. They were the fourth fastest car around Monza. They were struggling big time. Yeah, they did recover it eventually, but it took a long time to do it. So it's fascinating, really, that, they had that attitude. And maybe that's part of the reason why Newey left as well. Immature and inexperienced attitude, apparently, according to him, when it comes to Red Bull's problems. But guys, what do you think? What do you think about Red Bull this season coming up? Do you think they'll have one of the fastest cars? They've recovered their issues from early in the season. I want to hear last season, I should say. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, keep it tuned here to the F1Chronicle.com to see much more news and opinion pieces right here from the world of motorsport. Have a good one, guys. See you soon.